afternoon, and on behalf of the Knox County Democratic Party, I would like to welcome our next governor and a group of candidates far more capable of running the executive branch of the great state of Maine. Better than any of the wannabe LePage clones the other side is offering. Before I begin, I would like to tell a story about two corrupt real estate investors in New York City. I'll call them Don and Jerry. They are related by marriage. One day in the office, Jared goes up to his father-in-law and says, "I've just had a terrible thing happen to an investment property I overpaid for. I was about to go bankrupt when last night a fire wiped out the entire building. And with the insurance money I got, instead of losing money, I broke even." His father-in-law, Don, says to him, "Almost the exact same thing happened to me. I had a building that was about to go bankrupt, when all of a sudden there was a flood, and not only did it not go bankrupt, but I made a fortune on my insurance." Jared looked at his father-in-law and asked, "How do you start a flood?" Before anyone says fake news, let me assure you this was just a story. And we are never going to better our opponents at just making things up and pretending they are true. They have all the practice. Now, no one in this room would think of starting a fire like that, or wonder how to start a flood, but we're about to show the entire country how to start a wave. A wave that breaks first in the state of Maine and doesn't end until it crashes in California and Alaska and Hawaii. It begins with the people you will hear from today, so they can make their case why they should carry our banner forward. One of them will be the top of our ticket. But if we're going to take full advantage of the opportunity before us, they will need, and we will need, all the help and enthusiasm we can raise from as many Mainers as we can reach between now and Election Day. We have with us wonderful examples of that energy and enthusiasm. Maybe you've already seen her, if not, you're in for a treat. Please join me in welcoming a founder of the Maine Teen Advocacy Coalition, Pearl Benjamin.
Hi everyone, I'm Pearl Benjamin. I'm one of the co-founders of the Maine Teen Advocacy Coalition. That's the group that's co-sponsoring this event. We're super excited to be here today and to present all of our questions to all of the candidates. While I'm up here, I just thought I might want to point out that, as you can see, we have 4 female candidates and 3 male candidates here, and that makes this a female majority primary race, and that's really important. So before we get going, we're going to watch a short 3-minute video by Yara Shahidi, and yeah, then we'll get started.
Hey, I'm Yara Shahidi, and I just turned 18. I get to vote this year, finally. But wait, didn't we just do that, you might be thinking? Yes, we just had a presidential election in 2016, but these are the midterms. The midterm elections are exactly what they sound like. They are the election that happens in the middle of a presidential term. Get it? We aren't voting for president this time around, but don't think that means your vote doesn't matter, because it does. In a lot of ways, your vote counts even more during the midterms. You might be one of those people who say, "I don't really follow politics," but whether you follow it or not, politics follows you. They follow our communities. So why are the midterms important? 1, control Congress and we control the country. Here's what's at stake: gun reform, environmental policy, healthcare, student loan policies, criminal justice reform, defense and infrastructure spending, immigration and women and reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, civil rights, voting rights. Actually, everything's on the ballot. And you have the chance to make a change by voting. How much of a change? Well, how about this? Every single one of the 435 seats in the House of Representatives is up for grabs. Every single one. About a third of the seats in the Senate are in play too. The control of Congress is up for grabs this year. And the party that controls Capitol Hill basically decides which direction our country is going in. You feeling powerful yet? Well, that's just the federal government. Across the country, 36 states are holding elections for governor. You get a say in all of your local elections too. You may think Washington, D.C. has a lot of power, but a lot of the policies affecting your day-to-day life are coming out of local government. Debt-free college, redrawn congressional districts, legalizing cannabis, criminal justice reform. These are the sort of things that start locally. Local policy matters. Local politicians matter. And that means your vote in local elections matter. In 2018, young people, which is us, can literally decide on the direction of our country. There's never been more of us, ready to fight for what's right now. But here's the thing, young people don't have a great record of turning out for the midterms. And I want to be a part of the generation that changes that forever. We're about to shake things up because you by fighting for what you believe in. And you know that if young people don't turn out and speak out with their vote, we won't be listened to. Politicians are going to say that young people won't turn out because we never turn out. Well, let's call BS on that. Let's say this is the year that changes. We're going to raise our voices louder, rally our friends together, and register to vote. This is our right. This is our duty. This is our chance to call the shots. So don't waste all that power. Register, show up, vote.
Hello? Welcome, Democrats.
We're gathered here today for the Knox County gubernatorial. My name is Aiden Amish and I attend Oceanside High School. I was the chair of the Christian Caucus and I attended the Democratic Convention on the part of my town.
My name is Eileen Monroy. I am a junior at Madomic Valley High School, and I have been interested in politics for many years. And we are your moderators for today's forum.
Okay, so I just gotta say this now. You guys don't have to clap for everything. Or else we'll be here all day. So before we begin, let me introduce our timekeepers. Dave Miramont, our state senator from Knox County, District 12. And Vicki Dudera, a candidate for state representative for the District 3, representing Clifton, Rockport, Idaho.
Now, let me explain how today's forum is going to go down. First, we will give 1 minute to each candidate to introduce themselves to our audience.
Then our student panel, all of whom are from Camden Hills Regional High School, will introduce themselves. They not get a minute.
You guys want to start?
Hi, I'm Betsy Sweet, and I'm a candidate for governor. I am so happy to be here. The best part about this campaign has been meeting the most amazing young people that we have met on this campaign, part of the Can We Project. We've seen young people coming out in droves. And it's so important because this is the year, this is our moment. We have been resisting for so long and saying no for 8 years for many of us, and the last 2 years for some. This is our chance to say yes. Yes to something different. I've been an advocate at the State House for most of the issues you saw in that video. And I have been working so hard, but I have not been part of the broken system. And I am proud to say I am the only Democratic candidate here at this forum and on the ballot who is running as a clean elections candidate. Because the underlying issue of every issue that we care about, health care, reproductive rights, gun safety, the environment, the thing that stops us in both the Democratic and Republican parties often is money in politics. I see it every day as an advocate. I see it when I talk to young people and they say, why doesn't it matter? Why don't our voices matter? We see it when referendums are overturned that we voted on. We see what intervenes. And this is our chance to show Maine and the rest of the world that we can do it differently. I'm excited to be part of that, and I can't wait for the rest of the questions.
Good afternoon, my name is, that was loud. Mark Eames. candidate for governor. I served in the state legislature for 8 years, 4 of which I was honored to be nominated and elected by my peers as Speaker of the House, well before I ever thought about getting into public office or running for public office. I was helping families in trouble. My professional background, I'm a family therapist, and often my practice was home-based. So I would drive out to people's homes, and often in rural parts of the state, and drive down long driveways and knock on doors, and I'd never know what was on the other side. But I'd walk through, I'd sit with families around their kitchen tables and in their living rooms, and we'd work it out together. I took that same approach when I ran my first race, a district that hadn't been held by a Democrat in almost 40 years, and we won. And when I showed up, we fought for things like Medicaid expansion, funding our kids' schools, investing in renewable energies when we could. People have told me if any time in our state's history we need a family therapist, it's after 8 years of Paul LePage. I happen to agree with them. And I really look forward to engaging in this conversation. And thank you, students, for pulling this together and making it happen. Thank you.
And I'm the Attorney General of the state of Maine. I was elected by the legislature. I was elected by Democrats, Independents, and Republicans in the legislature. And I grew up in Farmington, just about 70, 80 miles west of here. I'm running for governor to bring back a sense of community that I knew growing up in this state. A sense of trust, a sense of transparency, and a tradition of civility. I've had to deal with this governor for the last 5.5 years. And believe me, there's been a lack of transparency and civility. Talk about the need for a therapist. One of the slogans I really wanted to adopt when we were elected is, Janet Mills, she's emotionally stable. Janet Mills, she'll take the goober out of gubernatorial. Getting spunky here towards the end of the campaign now. I was district attorney for 15 years as well in Western Maine, 3 counties, and I've been elected 8 times in the 2nd Congressional District. I am a 2nd Congressional District candidate. I'm anxious to take back the vote of the 2nd District, help defeat Bruce Public as well on my way to being governor. And I've been endorsed by Emily's List, and I co-founded the Maine Women's Lobby some years ago. I served 4 years in the Appropriations Committee, 6 years in the legislature, 4 years in the Appropriations Committee. I have sued Big Pharma and big polluters and Wall Street giants, and with the money. I've gone over a minute. Okay, no more jokes. I'll tell you what I did with those settlements later on.
It's dangerous talking to politicians because we never see the clock, even if it's in front of us. Good afternoon, my name is Mark Dion. I'm a state senator from Portland. I've served in the legislature for 8 years, chaired energy and utilities. I've been the leading advocate on gun control issues as far as trying to resolve what I understand to be reasonable gun ownership, but at the same time separating individuals who pose a threat to us collectively from their firearms. I spent 12 years as the elected sheriff, thanks for the cue card, of Cumberland County, 21 years with the Portland Police Department. I'm a practicing attorney, but my hardest and proudest work was as a community organizer where I established 5 centers for healthcare and public safety in the city of Portland. And one of those gems was developing something called Diversity Leadership Institute for young people from immigrant families. Today, those young people are in their mid-30s, and that was a model that led to the civil rights team. Thank you, Senator. I'll yield the floor.
Good afternoon. Are you fired up to take back the Blaine House? My name is Diane Russell. I fight like a girl, and I am running for governor to put power back into the hands of real people where it belongs. The system has been rigged against everyday people for too long, and real voices are being lost in the mix. I am so excited that we have these students leading the charge today because the lockdown generation, and that is what they are right now, has so much power in this election, and we need to make sure that they're able to wield it. If we do put power back into the hands of people, we're going to have Medicare for all. We're going to have an economy that works for everybody. But I ran for office because I believe in power for people. It's why I led the fight to bring ranked choice voting to this election and to hopefully to future elections. It's why I led the fight to legalize marijuana so communities of color were not arrested disproportionately. And it is why I led the fight to take on the DNC directly and change the superdelegate system to put power back into the hands of everyday people so that when we nominate our candidate for the President of the United States, that it sticks.
So those of you who have been paying really close attention to this election might notice that I'm not Adam Cody. My name is Ben Algio. I'm Adam Cody's field director. Adam is late today because he got stuck in traffic on 295 after a big wreck. But he's no quitter. He's on his way. He's going to answer some questions, and he's going to stick around after, so if anyone wants to talk to him. Just very quickly, I am a proud former member of Knox County Democratic Committee, and I just want to give a shout out. So I won't answer any questions for Adam, but I'll just let you know a little bit about him. He's from Sanford, 20-year veteran of the Maine Army National Guard with 3 combat deployments to Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He works in clean energy as an attorney. That's a big reason why I'm supporting him, because I think that we need to be supporting and promoting clean energy growth in Maine, and he would be a real leader on that issue. So I'll let him speak for himself for 1 minute.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I am so excited that the kids are involved because they are our future. And I have 2 granddaughters. I'm too old to be mothers to anybody right here, but granddaughters who are 18 and 20, and they're very involved. I'm from Biddeford. I was the mayor and at the same time the chair of the school committee. So you want to talk about, I've been messing with volatile individuals for a long time. I've done a lot of professional, financial, management activity in the community. I am not a clean election candidate. I tried to be, but I was not successful in getting my 3,200, so I decided I would be a clean candidate. I only accept $5 to $100 from individuals, no PAC money, no special interest. So I might not get state money, but I'm still clean. Thank you.
So now the students from Camden Hills Regional High School will introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Iris Luce.
I'm Jackson Chadwick.
I'm Frances Austinson.
Good afternoon, I'm Sam Maltese.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Walsh.
I'm Jesse Bifolco.
I'm Pearl Benjamin. Hi, I'm Meredith Luce. And I'm Greta Bishop.
Okay. Thank you all. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to silence your phones and no flash photography. All right, and now the fun begins.
So what we're going to do is we're going to draw names from the hat, and then we're going to pick candidates. So Emily, you can start.
Adam Cody.
Actually, we're going to put that back in and draw again. Mark Dion.
Okay. So each will have 10 minutes to be questioned by our student panelists. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question before follow-up questions are asked. Our faithful timekeepers will show a 30-second warning when it's time to move on.
I'd rather face the jury.
Hi, I'm Frances again. So you sponsored LD 1761, a red flags bill, which was an attempt to limit the amount of mentally unstable people with access to guns. What other gun control measures do you think the state needs to take, and what is your plan to put these into place?
What was the last part?
Like, what is your plan to put them into place?
My plan is to get them passed and have them signed or have a veto override vote. The red flag bill is an attempt to allow the police or family members to petition the court if they determine that an individual in their family or known to them appears to be on a downward trajectory, and it's clear to them in their gut and in their heart that nothing good will come from this, and that that individual does have access to firearms, the police and those concerned family members could appear before a court and have an order so the police could take the weapons into their custody on the hope that then an appropriate intervention can be applied and we can get this individual in treatment or back on track. It would only take the weapons for 14 days, so it's a limited intrusion into the Second Amendment. A couple of sessions ago, I sponsored and saw passed, I should say, a universal background check bill. And what was unique about it is we excluded the transfer of firearms among family members. That bill was an attempt to make sure that third parties, unknown to all of us, when they purchase a weapon, it should be checked out. But as a father passing my rifle onto my daughter, or my daughter onto her son, should not be invaded by government action. Somewhere along the line, we have to trust who we are as a people, and my bill was a reflection of that. But as I told,
we're going to move on to the next question. We're trying to ask as we can in a 10-minute period. So
you just have to tap me and I'll stop. I'm easy.
Hi, Mark. I'm Jackson. You talked about restoring the paper industry. How do you plan to do this without damaging or causing harm to the environment?
Well, I think the paper industry is a legacy industry, but I think I want to back up just a little bit. Forest products, biomass is essential to success of eastern and northern Maine, and quite frankly, even western Maine in the 1st District. That biomass generates energy, but they haven't been able to be successful in terms of getting a price for that product that makes sense. How it relates to the paper industry is the process of creating paper creates a lot of residual waste, and that waste can literally choke a sawmill or a paper mill. So for foresters to get the right price for biomass is essential. I and Senator Garrett Mason sponsored a bill to provide $13 million in transitional funding to keep those 2,000 plus jobs alive while we develop new products. And my hope is with continued investment in the University of Maine at Orono, we can do that.
Will the increase of the paper industry affect the sovereign right of the Native Americans to the waterways? And what role will the Native Americans play in this process?
You know, frankly, I've never thought about those two issues as joined, all right? So I think I'll answer the second part first. The Indian Settlement Act needs to be renegotiated. As an attorney, you can represent that contract as part of your due diligence, but you also have responsibility to tell the people you're representing, the state of Maine in this instance, is that it's not working anymore. It was written in a time where racism was alive and well and just below the table of the conversation. It's clear that we have to renegotiate and reconsider our position as Mainers with indigenous people and their assertion that they're a sovereign nation. That has to be renegotiated. And in terms of renegotiating that settlement, in essence, we'd also be dealing with their right to their own waters, their right to sustenance fishing, their right to manage their own timber. It all comes to that. So I think it's really essential to do that. Now, for a moment, not only as a senator, but as a lawyer, it's a complex document. It has political ramifications that I consider are important in terms of equity between two people, between a state and a nation. But it also has real complexity as a legal document. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we should undertake that mission. We cannot say, I'll yield, Senator. I just want to go on the record that Senator Miramont never yields on the floor. Never.
Did you agree with the $60 million tax break granted to General Dynamics? How affected small businesses in Maine?
I did not agree with it. I voted against it. I think I was only one of 5 Democrats to say no. I cannot in good conscience agree to a tax break to a corporation that paid its CEO $200 million last year. The $2 million in tax breaks we gave, to my mind, was a hostage payment. I won't be part of it. The money we gave, we credited it away to General Dynamics, could have been used on the infrastructure of the greater Bath Brunswick region. If you want to do something that supports business, fix the roads. If you want to help business, bring broadband. If you want to help business, do workforce training. Those are legitimate expenditures of tax money. Writing hostage checks to General Dynamics is something I wouldn't have part of.
What is your plan to deal with the opioid epidemic in Maine?
Okay, look, it's a crisis, and I suggest there's enough of us in this room, there are many here who are touched personally by this issue. The conversation is focused largely on providing Narcan, providing resources in emergency rooms or clinics to deal with the immediacy of an overdose. We've done short-term work on defelonizing heroin possession. I sponsored a bill to do that, and we got that through. That was critical. Those who suffer from addiction are not evil. They're not moral failures, and neither are their families. The conversation that I've been trying to have is twofold. Addiction is a lifetime journey. It's a decision every single day to say no. And sometimes you can't do that alone. I would like municipalities to redesign their zoning ordinances so that we can have low barrier access to recovery homes. All of us know our individual success came from the support of others. Those homes provide that. The second prong of my plan is to work with employers so they can take the risk and be supported for intentionally hiring those in recovery. Recognize that the path is not a straight line, but appreciating that dignity and self-worth, the two essentials stolen during addiction, can be recovered through the support of a workforce participation. That's
So my question is, how do you think we could improve the educational experience for women and girls here in Maine?
I'm only smiling because I grew up with 3 sisters, my mom, my grandmother, and something they referred to or somewhat as a maiden aunt in my household. I firmly believed that gender actually ran the universe. So this all comes as a surprise to me. And then I go out and get married and have 2 daughters. That was God just reminding me who's in charge. Your question is important because when my youngest daughter told me one day she wanted to be the director of the FBI, I think my wearing uniforms might have influenced her, I didn't know if that was possible. I didn't know whether or not an educational system or our communities sent messages to our women and our young women that anything they aspired to was possible. So as a governor, I want to send the message that talent, ingenuity, intellectual ability is not the reservation of men only, all right? And in plain English, I had an argument once with my wife who'd been married for 40 years. So from time to time, we disagree. And when my eldest asked her, "Is Dad right?" I heard my wife in the other room say, "He's not wrong, but he's not right." So I've learned flexibility is essential on this issue. Thank you, Senator.
So, then the time for 10 minutes. All right, so now we're going to have the next candidate come up. We're going to drop them back. So now it's Marquise. This is my game show. We're playing it how I want. It's Marquise.
You have a very comprehensive plan on what you would do to end the drug epidemic in Maine. How long do you think that this plan will take?
I think we need to be realistic about the problem and realistic about what we can do and how quickly. The indicator and marker of a successful administration under my administration would be the first year in which those numbers start to go down. Last year, 418 Maine people overdosed and aren't with us anymore. So it's got to be a comprehensive approach, one that includes and involves increase in treatment options, because right now we're sending our own residents out of state to get treatment. We have to make sure that we're increasing coverage, health coverage, so that people, when they need to go get help, they can. Medicaid expansion is a big part of that. I've worked for 4 years in the Speaker's office to try to make that a reality. The governor put up a roadblock so the people went out and made sure that it happened. How quickly, we have to work on it immediately. It is a top priority of mine. This time next year, we'll be making progress on it. My very last session, Mike Thibodeau, who's the Republican senator, president of the state Senate, and myself sponsored a piece of legislation in my last session. And it had some meaningful reforms, investments in more money into recovery centers, making sure that we had detox centers in the 2nd Congressional District, rural parts of Maine. It took 2 years. We passed it. But it took 2 years for the Department of Health and Human Services to implement any of it. There's been no sense of urgency around this from this administration. Right now we have a policy of lock them up or let them die. And that is such an awful thing to say, but that's the strategy that we've had for the last couple of years.
What is your opinion of the LePage administration's attack on the land trust movement in Maine?
Say the last part.
I'll just read the whole thing. What is your opinion of the LePage administration's attack on the land trust movement in Maine?
Land trust movement. The governor and myself have very different opinions about the value of land trusts. He's taken this position that it takes taxes off the rolls. He actually dedicated a large portion of his State of the State, his very last one, to really demonizing land trusts. We've got a lot of catch up to do. The Land for Maine's Future bond was the very first bond that the governor refused to release, which started a very dangerous precedent of not releasing bonds. So we have a very different opinion. Land conservation and programs like Land for Maine's Future provide that financing, the last financing, to make sure these deals come through. Once land is developed, it's gone forever. And if we have anything in our state that is our quality of life, our beauty, and we need to protect it. So, as governor, in my first session, we would be proposing an LMF bond so that we can go back to conserving land. We've got a lot of catch up to do. So we have a difference of opinion.
You mentioned that you would like to raise teacher salaries from $30,000 to $40,000. How do you plan to finance those changes?
The same way in which we finally fund schools at 55%. We have to stop overturning what the will of the voters, what they voted on. So, in my first budget, there's a lot of firsts up here, but there's a lot of work to be done. So, we will make sure that the bill that was passed at the ballot box, that made sure that everybody was paying their fair share, we would implement it. It's a surcharge on high-income earners. Income inequality is a huge problem nationally, certainly is in our state. That's how we start to fund education, making sure we get to the 55%, and also make sure that we can raise teacher salaries to the floor of $40,000 in the first year.
So your platform has a lot to say about the funding of schools and teachers. The funding of schools is important, but just as important is the direction the schools get from the administration. What academic initiatives do you support? Do you think that the Common Core has been beneficial to the Maine children and educators?
So my policies would support robust investment in pre-K and vocational training programs. And it just can't be additional money that's put into public education. We have to make sure that those investments are smart and targeted. The reason I believe we need to make this investment in our vocational training programs is because we need to value every pathway for our kids. And if kids aren't going to go to 2- and 4-year colleges, we need to make sure that they graduate high school with an employable credential. We have that opportunity to make sure that we're working with businesses locally to identify what their workforce needs are and work with our vocational training programs to make sure that our kids can get a good paying job. Now the standards that have been established, a big part of the negotiation to run for governor about a year or more ago with my kids was that we would get rid of standardized testing and a whole lot of educational reform. They're going to hold me to that, but we have to have a big conversation, and we have to have a commission of education that is competent, that has both classroom experience and administrative experience. Right now, under the LePage administration, there have been 8 commissioners of education in the last 7 years. That is a failure for our state, it's a failure for our economy, and education would be a top priority, starting with making sure we fully fund it, and when we do, making those targeted investments so that our economy can grow. And kids, all of you, I hope have an opportunity to stay right here in our state and get a good paying job. That's what
Last year was the deadliest year in Maine on the roads. Will you be doing anything to make our roads safer regarding infrastructure?
Well, texting and driving, I think we need to be a little bit more explicit about that being illegal. I think we have a distracted driver law, but we need to be more aggressive, I think, like other states. We need to make sure that our roads and bridges are safe. Right now, they are not, and the scores that we get from folks that come in and do an assessment on our roads and bridges, we are failing and way behind. We need to make sure that we can fund adequately our roads and bridges. Right now, we're bonding $100 million every single year to keep up with the very basic maintenance, and we're not even able to keep up with the basic maintenance. So I think we need to be realistic about a comprehensive approach to raising money to fund our infrastructure, including looking at the gas tax. It's a hard conversation to have as that gas starts to tick up. But one of the worst things I think the LePage administration did in 2010 was get rid of indexing on our gas tax and hasn't made any increase in it in the last decade or so. So we have to make sure that our roads are safe. The way that we do that is put money into them, and then those educational programs around making sure none of us are texting and driving, that we have 2 hands on the wheel as we drive. And trust me, we all need that reminder, including myself. So.
Many governors throughout the country have promised to fulfill their duty to the Paris Agreement, despite President Trump's disregard of it. Will you join them in their promise to protect our environment?
Yes, Maine would be the state that joins I would not just join, I would aggressively pursue chairing that as a state that cares so much about our environment and that has an opportunity to make investments in our renewable energies and play a huge role reclaiming our space within this area. We have, under this governor, have lost a lot of ground. We used to be leaders in this, and we can be again. We can be the first state in the nation to be 100% renewable, creating more energy than we produce. We can do that through solar and offshore wind. Those are our opportunities. So we need to reclaim our space on the national and global stage as it relates to renewable energies, and becoming a member and chairing the Clean Energy Alliance is one way that we can do that.
We come to the list of questions that Mark, you went right through them. Nice.
All right, good. Well, fantastic. Thank you.
So we're going to draw names again. Diane Russell.
So I am wearing a dress. So if you don't mind, if it's okay for the panel, I would prefer to stand because otherwise there might be some views none of us need.
You were very
very upset about the fact that ranked choice voting was not implemented even after it was passed as a referendum. If a referendum was passed that you didn't agree with as a governor, would you still implement it?
First, I need to thank Sam for the cookies. They're delicious. So I have been working on referenda for a while. I started with the Opportunity Maine program about a decade ago to make it so that students could go to college and earn and get a tax credit against their student loan payments. And I also tried to get legalization passed through the legislature. That didn't work, so we took it to the ballot box. And with ranked choice voting, I have been working on that since 2007, diligently fighting, doing the small little things, and we kept trying to bring it to the legislature and it failed. And so we passed ranked choice voting at the ballot box, and then the legislature came in and repealed it, just like they've been repealing all of these other bills or not implementing them appropriately. We have to respect the will of the voters. You know, when gay marriage, when we did, Mark Eves and I had the privilege of voting for marriage equality our first term, and the people voted to repeal it. I categorically disagreed with that decision. However, it was the people that took that petition back up and won it again. We have to trust the people, and we have to trust the voters, even if we disagree with them. Because even if they get it wrong this time, we can make the case to help them get it done right the next time. But politicians have to stop treating voters like we're stupid. Because they keep saying, well, you didn't read the bill. Well, I'm going to tell you, I served 8 years in the House. Neither did the legislators.
You repeatedly focus on the offshore tax loophole. What is your plan and steps to fix the offshore tax loophole? You stated that the money from closing the tax loophole would make $10 million to go to the ending hunger. How do you expect to distribute the money to farmers to end hunger by 2020?
Francis, thank you for that question. This is I never get to talk about this. So we all know that the tax system is set up to favor a certain demographic that many of us are not part of. And what we have now on the books is and it's legal, they can legally, under the state taxes, hide their money in the Bahamas or in Sweden, Switzerland in the Swiss banks. I don't think that they should be hiding $10 million to do that. If we close that tax loophole, it brings in $10 million to the state. That is $10 million that has not yet been accounted for, but I have an idea. There are 1 in 5 children go to bed hungry every night in this state. What is the point of being the richest country in all of human history if we can't provide basic health care or make sure that our kids can eat at night? Which makes it very difficult if you're hungry to learn, right? I know I learn a lot when I'm starving. And I'm so pleasant. So imagine if it only took $7 million to close the hunger gap. That is what we need. Imagine if we took that from people that were kind of cheating the system, the corporations, and directed it. But imagine greater if we invested that money directly into our local farmers to provide not just food like pasta, but nutrition. That is already happening in this state. We are seeing nonprofit organizations do that, but they are $7 million a year shy from being able to close the gap. We are going to take money from the offshore bank accounts from the people that are cheating the system and do it to make sure that our kids can eat.
I have a short question for you. What was your specific role in the superdelegate reform?
It was an accidental role, Jackson. So I introduced an amendment to, everybody was talking about the superdelegates and the unfair balance of power, because this election is about power. Who has it and who doesn't? And we have a power problem in our party too, right? So we had a group of people that could vote however they wanted to. And then we had the rest of us that showed up to the polls and fought for who we believed in. So I introduced an amendment. Everybody was talking about it across the country, but nobody had a fix for it. I'm the fix-it girl. I'm the one that says, well, let's just try to fix it, right? So I introduced an amendment at the state party level. They told us that we couldn't pass it because it was not really legal according to the bylaws. Well, we passed it anyway. And in 2 months, 20 state parties across the country passed similar amendments to change the way we nominate the President of the United States and to put power back into the hands of everyday Democrats. Because that is what we need in this country. And then we went to the national group, the national convention, and we made the case. And 750,000 people across
across the country signed petitions saying, please democratize the way we nominate our president, right? And at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders asked me to speak at the Democratic National Convention. I hope I made you proud, to make sure that everybody in this country knew that a single working class voice can make a difference. The idea that I can grow up in a trailer in Maine as working class as they come and to still be working class and be able to lead the fight to change the way we nominate the President of the United States, isn't that what Maine is all about?
You have focused on the growth of the marijuana industry in Maine to build the economy, and how do you plan to increase the growth of the marijuana industry?
Great question. I would like to specify that that industry is only for people who are 21 years old or older. And yes, I will pardon you. So we have had an industry, a cash crop, for decades, and we've all known it's there. And I started looking at the arrest rates, and when you are twice as likely to be arrested based on the color of your skin, I don't think that's a fair system. And it means that if you had a joint in your pocket at 19 years old, you were not allowed to go to college for the rest of your life. You could not get federal student loans. Now that we have this industry, we need to make sure that we are not shutting out communities of color who have been disproportionately impacted from prohibition. Right now, millions of dollars are being invested in this state. Hundreds of jobs have been created. You don't even see it because it's not there. You don't see it yet because they're in programs. But millions and millions of dollars are being invested right now. And we talk a lot about people coming out of high school and not being able to get a job. Well, they're getting jobs right now, you're just not seeing it. So what we need is to get the commercial system up and running so that you don't end up with a free gift with purchase. Nice, expensive t-shirts being sold right now. We should have a commercial system, and that money that we earn from it should go to treatment, and it should go to create a revolving school loan fund for school maintenance so that communities can afford significant maintenance costs that they are otherwise not able to afford right now. This economy is building, it is coming. We just need to get out of the way to answer your specific question about how we grow the economy. And literally, we're gonna grow it. Oh, and by the way, they went from 6 plants to 3. As governor, my first order of business is to make sure you get your 6 plants back.
In 2020, it's projected that residents who are 65 or older will outnumber the young population in Maine. What measures will you be taking to make sure that Maine's younger population will increase?
Well, let's elect a young governor. Look, we have to think about student debt, because student debt is a sacrifice, and Maine is not unique. We have one of the best financial aid programs, Opportunity Maine. I collected signatures right here to help make sure it was happening. But we have to be looking at the reality of student debt because it is burdening my generation and your generation. I talk to students and graduates all the time that cannot buy a house, cannot have children. I don't have children. I can't afford it, right? Because the student loans are so high. We have to address that. We also have to look at rural parts of the state where we are closing elementary schools. My class was the first class to graduate out of my elementary school. It was a brand new school. It was great. It was like all of a sudden we went from this really old school to this fabulous, fabulous learning experience, and we got to graduate. And just a few years later, they are now looking to close it repeatedly. Well, why would I want to come back to my hometown, which I do actually want to do, to have children if I know that my children are going to have to drive 20 minutes or 30 minutes to school, which on a bus ride is an hour and a half, right? We need to make sure that we are not just investing in addressing student debt, but that we are not closing down elementary schools so that we can bring young people to rural parts of the state. We also have to address housing costs, which are really out of control in the coastline and the southern part of the state because it is really causing problems. I hope that answers your question. All right.
So you talked about this a little bit in your last answer, but how will you finance your plan to lower student loans and debt?
We need to go back. So it's already financed. The Opportunity Maine program has 2 parts. One is that the student can get a dollar-for-dollar tax break against their student loan payments. The other part is that the companies can pay the student loan payments for their eligible employees. Companies are not taking advantage of that right now as a benefit. So So it's not that we have to create new money to do that. For the next generation, we have to get companies on board with the Opportunity Maine program so that they can provide those tax breaks directly to their eligible employees. That would be a huge difference. And then we have to have a conversation, a longer than 30-second conversation, Senator, about how to address the student loan debt for people that don't qualify for that.
Sit in the hot seat if you want, you can stand.
Want to sit in the hot seat? Well, no, that's all right. Anybody got a seat? Get up there.
Okay. How has being mayor of Biddeford prepared you for being governor if you are elected?
Well, you have to understand Biddeford is the 6th largest community, so it's very controversial. During my time period from 97 to 03, we had multiple things going on. First of all, we had an incinerator in the center of town. So I was arguing what was being spewed into the community, the air toxins. And so in the process, I realized there was 21 businesses like that. So I pulled 21 businesses and 21 attorneys into a room, and over a number of months, we actually developed the strongest air toxics ordinance at that time for the state of Maine. Second of all, we also had a part of our community who wanted to secede. They wanted to become their own village. They didn't no longer want to be part of Biddeford. As a citizen, I sat there in those meetings, and I proposed a policy to the state board that was overseeing it, and they proceeded to, instead of at the 11th hour saying they could secede, they told me that they had to take my policy. I became mayor in December, and by September, we had worked with that community. We had established a policy that they agreed to. It is still in operation, and they have a voice in our community, and they're not a separate community. Those kinds of issues, economic development, for anybody who's been next to Biddeford Crossing, Market Basket, that's my economic development. I find money to establish issues that we need to expand or take care of, and as a result, I've been very successful.
Thank you. You've been on record as saying you're a Democrat, but a conservative Democrat. Can you elaborate on this a little bit?
Yes, because I'm sort of the money candidate. I am conservative because I want to know how things are going to be paid. I agree with every policy you're going to hear. Anything that we do make the people of our community much better. But I want to investigate how we pay for those issues. So I look at where's the money being spent currently? Is it being spent effectively? Can we change it? And can we make it better for us to then implement better education, better insurances? How do we support the individuals, the elderly, the children, and so forth? So I'm sort of the individual always looking at money. I think earlier you heard about tax exempts. Well, we talked about one of them, but there's multiple ones. What were they supposed to do? Are they still creating jobs? Can we take them? Can we help our smaller entrepreneurs to build? So for me, it's not saying just the issues. The issues are important, but how do we pay for them? That makes me conservative because I don't automatically say it's going to happen. It should happen, but let's find a way for it to happen. Thank you.
In 2017, Maine voted to pass expansion of the Affordable Care Act. Governor LePage has now vetoed this expansion 5 times. What is your plan on making healthcare more accessible to all Mainers?
Well, I think the Medicaid expansion, I worked 20 years for a nonprofit organization. I firsthand saw the impact of some of the individuals who were no longer covered, didn't have access for clinical support, who had mental challenges that needed to be addressed. So when we do this, and now with the opioid situation, I think there's an opportunity for us to take that big step, utilize those money, remember, money person, utilize those money and support those efforts in order to get individuals covered and establish some of those transition homes for clinical support. I've been working with some of the police stations who are doing a pilot program at the present time, looking at how effective they're using that temporary money and how we could expand that to assist individuals to transition them eventually into active community members. And so that's part of it as well, is helping those individuals with a lot of mental challenges that are sitting on the sidelines and sometimes end up homeless. Thank you.
You have focused on creating jobs in Maine, how would you create jobs that pay well and can sustain a family?
I think you need to look, first of all, remember all these things I'm saying about money? It's the process of saying, what do we do with our small entrepreneurs that are already here? Our businesses who would like to expand, who have no capital capabilities. They don't have the money to be able to invest, to grow, and to train individuals. So if we take some of this money that I know that's out there, that we are going to then reinvest it and provide as a carrot to all of our entrepreneurs, people who are trained, people who will have a baseline to assist them. I worked with the Work Investment Act on their advisory board for 7 years. During that time, we were collaborating with businesses and the types of positions they had, or businesses who said, I need some additional positions. So there's a lot of federal money out there, and I like to look for money. So let's bring it in, let's take full advantage of it, let's work with our local businesses and assist them in expanding. In the long run, we become a destination point, and we may get other businesses willing to come here. But in the meantime, broadband, electrical costs, all of these things have to be addressed. We want to be a business destination, not just a vacation land. Thank you.
How do you plan to make Maine welcoming to immigrants?
Hello. Welcome. There's the map. Come on in. I know in Biddeford we started with, and during my administration, we had gone to 21 different dialects, trying to get individuals with English as a second language. How did we transition them? How did we get them to fill the slots that we had available? We need this workforce. We actually need to go beyond just welcoming them. We need to devise some standard to look at their credentials that they're coming into the United States with, and how we make sure that they fall into the standards. Engineers, doctors, nurses, whatever else, get them to get their credentials here as quick as possible so we can increase fill the empty slots that we have in all of those arenas, and at the same time get the other individuals, students, through school, get them transition. They transition better than the adults do. The kids within the school system so that we have a future workforce. Thank you.
You talk about re-educating the workforce. Do you plan to make colleges more accessible to the average Mainer?
I think it is, but I think it was mentioned earlier, it's not just college. We need to be getting kids at an early age. I spent 2 years in the school system in Biddeford before I became mayor because I wanted to understand firsthand what was going on. I think we need to get children who found in the middle school age, they're starting to show things that they enjoy doing. And so we start helping transition them into the high school. So they get certification. We need those plumbers, those electricians, those carpenters. We need those very skilled professions where individuals can make a really good income. They really enjoy doing their work, and they can settle here and establish a family. Above and beyond that, you have culinary, you have the community colleges that provide all kinds of other access to education, and then the college. And yes, we need to be encouraging everybody to set their gear, because we don't want them to go to a 4-year college and have liberal arts and then they say, I don't know what I want to do. We need to be assisting them to find those directions so that they stay here. We're working on higher wages and more businesses, so we get them here to be ready and get the colleges to work, or the community colleges to do paid internships. So we once again get these individuals taking a specific course and matching them with some of the business openings. Thank you.
What programs do you plan to implement within schools that will promote safety but maintain a healthy and positive environment for students?
Well, I think we all have to be comfortable in being able, to indicate if they have a sense of something that's improper. They have to feel comfortable to have safe locations to talk to people. You have to be able to provide that where people are not. I know there was a situation when I was mayor, there was a bomb scare. And I immediately drove over there. Mayor in Biddeford, you know everything. Everybody tags you for everything, anything that happens. And so I went there to try to soothe the kids where we were going someplace else because they were panicking. Where's my stuff? Where's my friend? What if the school blows up? And escorting them out. You need them to have a comfort zone. You need to provide if there's some critical things happening where you feel that someone is depressed or upset, where do I go? You know, where do I go within the school? I want people in all the schools to feel we're protecting you, we're willing to listen. You firsthand know the activities and what's going on in the hallways. You know things that are going on. We need to be having those discussions. We need to pull the students more in than us telling you how things are going to be. We need to be listening to you and saying, how can we provide that? What is the safety net that you're looking for?
We got now for the 10 minutes? All right. Janet Mills.
Alright, so the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than 99% of the world's oceans. And because of this, many of Maine's fishing industries are threatened. As governor, what would you do to protect Maine's fishermen from the destructive effects of climate change?
Oh, great question. Thank you. There are a lot of things that we can be doing now to prevent, mitigate the effects of global warming and rising oceans. And a few years ago, the legislature authorized a study called the Ocean Acidification Report. And then it got put on the shelf. It's been on the shelf for a few years. And now starting to look at that again because there's a $1 billion lobster industry, multi-billion-dollar fisheries industry. Plus, you know, all the effects of tourism, if the ocean is warming, if it's rising, it would devastate the state of Maine. Not to take mitigating steps to prevent global warming, to address it. One of the biggest polluters in our state is transportation, vehicles. So I have used some of the settlement funds I've gotten from big polluters to assist people in buying and helping set up charging stations for electric vehicles and improving electric vehicles and authorizing their purchase. Also, in offshore drilling for oil and gas, I oppose that, oppose the Trump administration. But we've got to have a state planning office back. We used to have a planning office with business offices, and we work with the municipalities and the industries affected to help them prepare for rising ocean waters and global warming and the other effects of global warming. We've got to prevent it, prevent further pollution, and mitigate the effects.
Right. So I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as a student from Oceanside if I don't ask this, but I don't know if you're familiar with what shell rot is.
Shell rot.
It's like it affects lobsters, and it's what happened to a lot of lobster communities farther down, like Rhode Island, Massachusetts. If that were to happen in Maine, since we have warming oceans, what would you do to help, save the lobster industry, help people who are, hundreds and hundreds of people who are now without a job? What would you do to help them if that were to happen?
Well, the lobster industry, I mean, it's under attack from a lot of sources. I can't tell you what causes shell rot. I can only assume it's something new in the water, something that they're consuming or that's attacking their shells. So I don't know what causes it. I can't tell you how to prevent it. But I would obviously work with the lobster industry to allow them to diversify and help them diversify if it's fatal to the industry. I hope to God it's not. I hope not to see it in Maine. We've taken a lot of steps to prevent some of the disastrous things that happen in other states like milfoil and other invasive species in the lakes and rivers and lakes and streams of Maine and our ocean. We've done a good job of keeping Maine's waters and air pretty clean, comparatively speaking. I can't speak to shell rot, honest to God. I don't know what causes it, so I can't tell you how to deal with it if it comes here. I'd like to prevent it from coming here. Keep those Rhode Island lobsters out of here.
How do you justify being the only Democrat to not support the assault weapons ban and ban on clips/magazines exceeding 10 rounds in capacity?
I'm not the only Democrat that I don't oppose that. And congratulations, Sam, on your election to Vice President of your class. Congratulations. Here's where I stand on some of those issues. Look, I was in the legislature on April 2nd, April 12th, April 13th of this year, helping fight for Senator Dion's red flag bill. That's the first and foremost thing we can do to protect students in schools, to protect victims of domestic violence, and to prevent suicides. This is so important because we don't talk about suicide. We have a high rate of suicide in Maine, and a high rate of suicide by firearm. I think Senator Dion's bill will go a long way to preventing that. So you look at two things when you talk about firearm safety, and I'm keen on this issue because I've spent my life on public safety issues, preventing domestic violence, and that kind of thing. And I know this issue personally and professionally by heart. So, and I helped get passed the first bill that allows judges to take guns away from domestic abusers. And the way we do that is bringing people to the table. We've got a unanimous report. I do support reasonable regulations of military-style assault weapons. I've said that repeatedly, and regulation banning of certain high-caliber capacity magazines. We need to bring people together to the table to find out exactly what those firearms should be, who's on the list, what's on the list. The problem with the Brady bill a few years ago was it designated certain firearms but not others. The manufacturers made cosmetic changes and got out from under the ban on those guns. We need to be very careful about how we do it, and I'm keen on doing it.
How do you plan to repair the tension between yourself and the Native American tribes on the Penobscot?
A great question. Thank you. And we were all at a forum just a few weeks ago on Indian Island, and I addressed this, and I continue to address it. You know, what I say is I'd rather get things done by communication than litigation. As Attorney General, it's been my job to defend the state, sometimes in areas that I would rather not deal with. I don't get to pick and choose the cases that are brought against the state of Maine. But if they are defensible cases, I have to. I've taken an oath of office to defend the state. And in those cases, the case that was brought by the Penobscot Nation in particular, I defended the state, but Judge Singal and the judges on the higher court also said that the state was right in saying that the Penobscot River belongs to all the people, it's held in trust for the use and benefit of all the people. At the same time, we never disputed the right of sustenance fishing of tribal members, and I stand for that proposition. As governor, you have a different role. As governor, I propose to form new partnerships with all 4 tribes, and I have helped amend the Settlement Act in the past. On the Judiciary Committee, we amended it 3 or 4 times in different ways, and I helped do that. And I've had a good relationship with a lot of tribal members, and I hope to meet as governor, not only with the tribal chiefs, but with the tribal councils, and to better inform and enhance the work of the Maine Indian Tribal State Commission, which has been disregarded by this administration. There have been no new appointments in several years. They could be a good force for dispute resolution, not an adversary group, but a dispute resolution group. And I would want to work with the tribes for economic development, fisheries, etc. Thank you.
This question isn't on the list, but since gun control is something I've been passionately fighting about these past 6 months, I looked into your background and I noted that you had received an A or A+ rating from the NRA during your time in the Maine House. I was just wondering, has your stance on gun control and guns in general changed over your time in politics?
Good question. Certain people have been making a big deal of my having had an A rating from the NRA 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I did get an A rating. You know what they said at the time? It wasn't anything to do with guns. What they said at the time was, as an incumbent, Janet Mills supported no net loss of hunting land on state-owned property. So the idea, the legislation was, if the state owns property and you allow hunting, a certain number of acres for hunting, and the state closes that off, you open up the same amount of acres somewhere else for hunting and access to recreation. That's what they said. My record on guns is quite different than what you're suggesting right now. And let me make it clear. As far as I know, nobody else at this table has ever taken a dime from the NRA, nor would we ever. That should be clear. Not that they would offer any of us. They wouldn't. But I'll tell you that when I was in the legislature, I fought for good gun safety measures. I fought for the bill that allows judges to take guns away from domestic abusers. And I did vote for and support the bill that requires police to tell victims when an abuser is trying to buy a gun illegally. And I know how to work to get people to the table. The bills I'm talking about were actually supported by sportsmen and law enforcement and victim advocates groups. And I'm eager to do that again, to make sure that every child is safe, not just in school, but at home and on our streets. 3 years ago, open carry was passed with Democratic votes in the House. That was the biggest NRA victory in years. How did that happen? I don't want to see that happen again.
You say that you're passionate about government transparency, although you are not running a clean election. How do you feel about bringing money into politics?
Thank you. I ran clean elections 4 times for the House of Representatives. There are 2 different issues there. Clean elections is not the same as transparency. I think we're all transparent because we have to disclose who's given us money. Here's who my big corporate donors are right now. The Dugout Bar and Grill in Farmington, Maine. One's a friend of mine, gave me a couple $100. Doggy Daycare in York gave me a couple $100. She's a friend of mine. And Amore Ltd was one employee, she's my hairdresser, she gave me a couple. Those are my corporate donations in the sense of transparency and full disclosure. Clean elections, I was advised a year ago by people who had been through this that I shouldn't run clean elections because you couldn't rely on the funding, quite frankly. So I chose, with advice of my friends and people that to go traditional.
So that's the end of the 10 minutes, I'm assuming?
Oh, thank you.
It's Betsy Sweet, bye Paul.
I knew that.
What will your steps be to increase minimum wage, and how will this affect businesses in Maine?
Great. So, I don't think there's anybody in Maine who believes that someone should work 40 hours a week and not make enough money to put food on the table or a roof over their head. If minimum wage had been indexed, it should be about $22 an hour, $22.50 an hour. And we look at the people who are making minimum wage now. We have so many people in direct care work, people who are trying to care for the elderly, and people who are ill, and people who are have behavioral health needs. And those folks, we are losing them. I represent mental health folks in the legislature. We are losing those folks to McDonald's and to Walmart, where those companies are actually, we're paying Medicaid for their health insurance. We have got to raise the minimum wage, and all of that money goes directly into the economy. Someone who's making $15 an hour is not putting money in a savings account, is not putting money away for something else, it is going directly into our economy. And so it grows the economy, and that's been the experience as we've raised minimum wage. We always hear the horror stories like, oh, we're gonna go out of business, right? It doesn't happen. It's not borne out by the facts. So I think we need to look at raising wages for everybody, and all the wages need to rise, but we have to start with the floor.
How do you plan to expand Medicare to all of New England?
Great, okay. So I think that expanding health care to all Mainers is the #1 priority that our next governor has to face. Because if we don't do that, not only will people remain sick, but it is an engine for our economy. So many entrepreneurs in the state don't do their thing that they're passionate about, the thing that they're really good at, because they can't leave their job to lose health insurance. So many women stay in relationships that are dangerous because they're afraid to lose health insurance. So the first thing we need to do, obviously, is to fund the Medicaid expansion and make sure that that happens. We already have single payer. We have it for everybody who's 65 and older in Medicare, and we have everybody of a certain income and lower. And so what we're paying for, the people in the middle, we are paying for the profits of the insurance companies, the big pharma, the drug companies. We are paying not just for our medical care, we are paying for those profits. So we don't have a healthcare system right now, we have a sick care system. Because think about it, the only way these companies do well is if we stay sick, right? So the incentive for public health, this governor has decimated our public health system, for prevention, for healthy, I would say we do the first free prescriptions, good food, exercise, and enough sleep, we could take care of about 30% of the cost of our health insurance system. And we are never gonna get health care until we get money out of politics. Because the people who benefit by the system are the ones who have lobbyists and they keep the system in place. And that's how we're gonna get there.
How do you plan
plan to make Maine a leader in green economics?
Great question. I think that is one of the most exciting things about the time that we're in right now. Before you folks were born, it always was the economy versus the environment, right? It was a big fight. How are we going to do those things? Now, I think the environment and cleaning the environment and keeping it clean is the key to our economic success. Maine has the opportunity to be the leader in clean, renewable energy. It is our calling card. We have wind, we have water, we have amazing things. You know, our environment is why people come here. And so I think we have the real opportunity to do that. There's also some really exciting things happening, and just two quick things I want to talk about. One is, in Denmark, they've just commercialized this amazing thing called an energy pod. It's about 21 feet long, looks like a submarine, and it's got little paddles on either side that floats on the ocean. And just that kinetic energy in the ocean, that can power 4,000 homes. So Maine has the longest coastline in the country. Stretch it out. So we could just, if we could look into that technology and get the storage and the grid, that's an exciting thing that we could do. We could power not just Maine, but we could be an exporter of clean, renewable energy to the rest of New England. The other thing I wanted to is a project that is an environmental project. My sister's working for a project called Ecovative, and they are looking at the mycelium under the mushrooms that grow. We were trying to turn a compost pile, you know, it's very strong, and it's replacing styrofoam. And so they now Crate & Barrel and Dell Computer are using it. So instead of having a half-life of 1,000,000 years, you just throw it in your garden and compost. Well, now she is looking at making buoys out of it, because the lobster buoys are adding to the ocean acidification. These are ones that would last for two years, and then they would just decompose. So I think there's some exciting things that we do.
So I have a question that's not on our list.
Great.
My question is, I think a lot of Democrats believe that you're the ideal candidate, but that you won't
Win the general election.
Yes, win the general election.
But how can we get her elected? Yes, thank you. I am so grateful for that question, because it is a question a lot of people are feeling. And some editorials are actually saying that. So I think that, you know, we talk about the second district like it's another animal, like there's aliens who live there somehow. When I go to the second district and spend a lot of time there, we all want the same thing. We want health care, we want jobs that pay, we want a future for our kids. But most importantly, they want someone who's going to listen to them. They want someone who's going to pay attention to them. I think what we saw in the second district and the voting for Trump and Poliquin is especially for Trump and LePage, they wanted to poke us in the eye. They were mad because they said, we want to matter. We want our lives to matter. We want the reality of our lives to matter. And quite honestly, they're right. It hasn't. And I think one of the benefits is I am what I am. What you see is what you get. I am real. I don't change my position one day and then the next day. And I think the other thing is, as a clean elections candidate, people understand that this is the underlying problem, the toxic thing in our politics. And as a clean elections candidate, the only way I succeed is if I am not spending time in a room calling big donors, but I am out talking to people. And not only talking to people, listening. And to me, that's what people are looking for. And that's what I hear, that's what I see. I have talked to lots of people, like my family's from North Haven. I talk to lobstermen, I talk to people who work. I've been a cleaning woman. I've done a lot of different things. And as a single mom of 3 kids, my fight has been our fight. And I think that's going to translate really well.
What would you change if you reopened the Indian Land Claims Act?
Great question. Yes, I had the privilege of working with many of the tribes for many years, starting with the Civil Rights Team project that I helped found a long time ago, that I know you have in this school. But the first thing we have to do is change, in the Land Claims Act, we treated the tribes as municipalities, not as sovereign nations. So the number one thing we have to do is make sure that they are treated as sovereign equal nations, not as municipalities. And then I think we have to make sure that they have rights, that their courts are actually able to deal with violence against women, and that we do that. That's been changed. We have to allow them to have their own economic development decisions. So what they want to do for economic development should not be voted on by the rest of us. I have a long history, we have a long history in this state of trying to put minority rights out to the majority for voting, right? It's not even, you know, it's not how it should work, right? So I think we have to respect them. And I think we have to address, all of us, the racism that has been part of this. We have to deal with our own racism. It's true, we have to get rid of things that are symbolic as well as, the symbolic, like all the Native American mascots, and a lot of the things, the names of things in Maine that are actually demeaning and racist. We have, as a culture, we have to also work on those things as well. I think we have so much to learn from our tribes, especially about regarding the earth and how we treat the earth. And I think we can move to a very respectful, important relationship.
How have you raised most of your campaign funds?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I actually helped write the Clean Elections Law in 1996. I did the research with some college interns in 1992 in a very hot summer in my attic, and we were actually looking for examples of where money had actually overturned a piece of legislation, because we knew we couldn't pass the law unless we could prove it. And sure enough, we found many examples. So in order to be a clean elections candidate, you have to get 3,200 people in Maine to give $5 to say, yes, I want something different. And before that, you can little seed money for $100, they did that too. But 3,200 people, I am so proud that 3,200 people in Maine have said, we want money out and people in. I have now gotten the next 2 bumps, because you can get another 800 and get a little more money, and then you get another 800 and a little more money. Everyone said you can't do it. Every consultant I talked to said, oh, Betsy, you can't do clean elections. No one can do it. It's too hard. You can't raise it. Well, it's no harder than raising millions of dollars from outside sources and from rich people. So I think this is the way to put power back in people's hands, and I'm proud and proud. And thank you for many of you who might have done that. Thank you.
Is Adam Cody here yet? Do we know?
We could probably all give Adam's answers. We love him, yeah. And I also want to say, going last, it's always fun because I always like to say, I'm so glad you got to meet my cabinet first. What an extraordinary group of people.
Some of the kids on the panel have a question for Janet Mills. Would you like to come?
In an interview, you stated, or it was asked to you, do you support the weapons ban? And you said you could not support it. When there was a ban, there was also intended that there would be a ban on clips exceeding 10 rounds in capacity, and you said you could also not support that. Would you please elaborate?
I think what I said was, I would support reasonable regulation of military-style assault rifles and, excuse me, certain capacity magazines. I wasn't going to be deciding what capacity was the most likely to be used in violent activities or not, but that I would bring people together to make decisions about what firearms are the most dangerous, most likely to be used in the most terrible incidents that we've all read about. What kind of capacity magazines are the most dangerous, the most likely to be used in those kinds of incidents? I don't believe I ever said I was against ban. I said reasonable regulation of assault.
Yes, you never said you were against it. You just were not willing to support it at the time.
I wasn't going to jump on a bandwagon and say I'll ban X kind of firearm, right? I mean, I really respect the right of people in Maine who are mostly respectful of firearm safety, who've been trained in firearm safety. But, you know, the other day, that horrible incident last week was a guy with a shotgun. So we're probably not going to ban shotguns in the state of Maine. But are there certain kinds of firearms that we should be looking at? I'm not an expert in firearms, but I want to bring people to the table. I want to bring the people who know firearms and get their advice. I'm not an expert. And get the advice of advocates and law enforcement and other people as well. Find out what kinds of firearms might qualify as military-style assault weapons. That's all.
Okay, so unless Adam Cody gets here, we're gonna do one last thing. We have a plan to do, each of you get 1 minute to talk about what makes you different from all other candidates here. Listen to say, Nancy.
We could also, you guys had some questions that you wanted to ask all the candidates. We didn't think we would have time to do that. So maybe you could bring out a couple of those.
How much time do we have left?
right, so this question is, how would you solve the current legislative crisis in Augusta that has left important work undone, including school funding, voting on a red flags gun safety bill, and Medicaid expansion?
Jane, you can start, and then we'll just be going down.
Well, I'm not in the legislature right now, but as a governor, we'll make a great effort to bring people together. I've done it before. When I was on the Appropriations Committee for 4 years, I served during the worst years of Maine's economy. We had to work across the aisle to get things done. And the people are in a state of revolt. One reason, one reason there were so many referenda my door will be open to leaders of all parties in both houses of the legislature, and we will get things done the old-fashioned democratic way, small d, large d, by sitting at the table and working things out. You will know my goals and my vision of the state of Maine. Everybody will know that right off the bat, what my plan will be, what my specific goals will be, and we will work around the table to achieve those goals.
Okay, so do you guys want to just have Adam Cody come up with a question? All right, Adam, get up here in the hot seat.
Well, hello. There was a fatal accident on the highway. 2 hours in traffic. Any questions?
Yeah, some questions. Oh, yeah, do you want to have a big statement? Sorry.
Sure. Well, thank you all for coming, and I appreciate you waiting graciously. My name is Adam Cody. I'm one of the 7 candidates for governor, and I have a broad leadership background from local school committee to statewide boards. I've worked most of my career in clean energy. I was recognized by President Obama as a champion of change. My work on climate change and clean energy several years ago. And I've had 3 combat tours with the military in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And my core belief is that our next governor really needs to do 2 things very well. The first is restore a sense of stability, humility, and service back to state government. And the second is, I believe we need a transformational governor. We have the oldest population in the country. We're one of 2 states where our population isn't growing. We need to create more of a climate of innovators, of entrepreneurs, where young people want to raise families and stay. So that's why I'm running, and that's what I'd like to do as governor. Thank you.
All right, so now to the questioning. Many Mainers face a real growing challenge, which is food insecurity. Data provided by the organization Feeding America shows that some counties in Maine have the highest levels of food insecurity compared to everywhere else in New England, specifically Aroostook County. What is your plan to combat food insecurity, and do you think more kids should be eligible for the SNAP program?
I do believe more kids should be eligible for the SNAP program, and this is a problem, unfortunately, that is becoming unique nationally, more to Maine than other states. Food insecurity is going down nationally. It's going up in Maine. I believe the direct result of Governor LePage's policies. I strongly support food co-ops. I strongly support getting rid of the stigma that exists in our schools with free and reduced lunch. I come from a community where we have over 70% of our kids in most of our schools on free and reduced lunch, and we have various summer programs designed locally, frankly, to help people. In the lack of support from the state government, what we've seen are other groups to step up. Good Shepherd Food Bank is the most obvious one. They had to just open a massive facility just south of Bangor to help the distribution levels up here. I was at the kickoff of that event, and I asked them what it is they need primarily from the state government. They said support for a lot of the programs, obviously, that Governor LePage got. But they also said the most important thing we can do is really create creating some value and adding some connections to a lot of our existing businesses. The irony that this is happening, the sad irony that this is happening with our kids, is that one of the business sectors that's taking off in Maine right now is farming. So we're not making those connections. Those are exact type of things that our state government can do to coordinate with local farms and help a lot of the kids, especially that haven't been able to have food security.
Some people in communities in rural areas lack basic access to the internet, including school children. Specifically, what is your plan to expand broadband infrastructure and ensure that everyone has access to the internet?
Great question. When I've been talking, as I go through talking about our Growing the Economy plan, I really talk about three things. And the first one is workforce training, the other is focusing on our competitive advantages. But the first one is infrastructure, and it's broadband. We have one of the worst broadband connections in the country, and that affects everything like telemedicine, which is taking off. It affects the fact that we have kids sitting in parking lots of libraries trying to get a good internet connection. And it affects the fact that you can't sell blueberries outside of Washington County if you don't have a good internet connection. I would use a bonding approach first and foremost, backed off with and supported by partnering with local municipalities and private sector, those three to combine, as well as accepting federal funds. Cranberry Island just got a federal grant for $1 million to expand their rural broadband, with very little support from the state. When you go down to Washington, D.C., you see right across from the Russell Senate Office Building, this place is called the Hall of States. 48 states have offices there to directly coordinate with the federal government. Most often one that we talk about is Medicaid expansion, because that becomes the most talked about piece of accepting federal support. But it extends far beyond that. It's NIH grants, NEA grants, rural broadband, USDA grants. What we really need is establishing at the state level that this is a top priority. It's an essential service, to use sort of PUC regulation terms to show it, and that's what I would do as governor. Thank you.
Do you believe that Maine should switch completely to renewables? If so, how do you propose that would work?
Great question, and I have said I'm convinced and I have a plan to make Maine a 100% clean energy state. And I've spent a lot of time working in this space and in this field, and I'm convinced that not only can we produce more renewable power than we consume, we can be a regional provider. We're all part of the New England Independent System Operator. And we have enormous opportunities. Just the Maine Aquaventus project that the University of Maine is doing alone would create that much, has the capability to create that much power. We have enormous opportunities in solar, particularly community solar, which is kind of hindered by several state regulations. Now the reality is, you can't control the electrons, right? Everyone says, well, 100% clean renewable. What I mean by that is, we're producing more renewable power than we're consuming as a state. There will still be natural gas that's mixed into the fuel mix, but the important point is, we could be the first state that does this, and we're well positioned to do it. It's the worst kept secret in the clean energy space nationally that Maine has enormous opportunities, but we're not pursuing them. We had an event in my campaign on Earth Day. We had over 100 people there, leaders of all the major organizations, environmental clean energy organizations. I only spoke for a couple minutes. I reached out to the leaders of those groups, and they all spoke up and talked about the great opportunity we have. I'm also convinced it will help grow our economy. I think we can be a global leader in the technologies that come out of that and create jobs. Thank you.
So, do you believe the presence of a school resource officer or an SRO will help make schools safer and be beneficial for students overall?
I do, yes, I do. That's one piece of it. If you look at the schools throughout the state, we don't even have enough for every school district, a school resource officer, never mind every school. But that's one component of it. And it really needs, we're getting to school safety, we're getting to guns, we're talking about something that really, I know that on day one I would be a leader in this. I come from a background of having a grandfather grandfather was a Maine guide. I grew up hunting. I own firearms. I've trained hundreds of soldiers on how to use them. And I would be a leader on this immediately. And part of it is a school resource officer. Part of it is having real background checks without the loopholes. Part of it is saying, if you're going to carry a firearm in the state of Maine, the carry laws that we have, you're going to demonstrate you know how to use it. Part of it is cutting down on the capabilities of these firearms. I've said this before over and over again. There's no need for anybody to have the same firepower that I had in Iraq or Afghanistan here in Maine. And the other part specifically about keeping our schools safer, arming teachers is the wrong approach. Having school resources, but also people in schools that we've cut funding for who help identify at-risk people who might do this. Usually it's a teenage boy or someone in their early 20s, typically, that's been doing this. So it's a comprehensive approach that I would do from day one as governor, bringing people together in the sportsman's community, schools, and others to get this done. Thank you.
So I like what you said about the renewable energy. I was just wondering if you could talk about like restricting industry pollution and having like restrictions on the amount of things that have to do with the Paris Accord. Would you implement the Paris Agreement? I know other governors of other states have done that. That was a question asked earlier. Would you be for that?
Yes, I definitely would. And I would sign on to that. But for every state, the question you're getting to, Francis, is really about climate change and addressing it. And what we have not done here in the state of Maine is have a plan. I talked briefly about energy, but it's more comprehensive than that. We're part of RGGI right now, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which 7 or 9 states are in. I can't remember the exact number, but that addresses a specific type of pollution. I think we need to do it with transportation. I think we need to address the fact that the Gulf of Maine is warming. That affects our fisheries, ocean acidification, comprehensively. When you're dealing with things like air, you really need to be a leader regionally and partner with other states, including the Maritimes region. And what we're lacking, because we don't have enough time and whenever I get 90 seconds to answer this, the most succinct thing I can say to you is we need to have a real plan here in the state of Maine. We need to execute it, whether it's respect to becoming 100% clean energy state, or whether it's cutting down our carbon emissions, or doing any of that. We really need leadership up front. We need to have a comprehensive approach to it, and it needs to address transportation, it needs to address fisheries, it needs to address energy usage, consumption, and especially efficiency. So I would be doing that right away, establishing those plans and implementing. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. So, so what we're going to do is, each of you guys has 1 minute to answer this question, which is, what separates you from the other 6 people on this table?
That's a wonderful question. The first thing that separates me is I'm a clean elections candidate. I do not take big money. I am being invested in by thousands of people with $5. So that's number 1. Number 2 is I'm the sweet spot. I help myself. I'm someone who has been in the legislature for 35 years, so I know how to get things done. But I have not been part of the baggage. I am not part of the difficulties that we've had in the legislature. And so I think I have both the experience to get things done and yet not have that baggage. I think the other thing is something is really on the move here. If we look at the marches and look at the leadership of young people and the gun issue and everywhere, that is what we are looking at. Look what just happened in Ireland yesterday. 85% of young people. This is our opportunity. And I think something is in the move. We've got to capture that excitement, capture that energy, and it's not happening in one place. It's happening not just in Maine, all over Maine, but across the country. Look at the people we're electing, bold, progressive people, and I'm very happy to say I won 65 stronghold and wonder. We have to capture that energy, and that's what we're about.
So are you guys ready to stop being embarrassed by our state? Are you ready to be proud of our state again? That's the headlines that we need to be making. You know, I do want to be the youngest governor of the oldest state in the nation. Tell the story of what it's like to raise a family. I've got 3 kids. They're 13, 11, and 8. And in 10 years, when they're going into the workforce, I want them to have the opportunity to choose Maine as their place of residence. For my grandkids to grow up here, just like my kids, have a really close relationship with my parents. That's what I want for my kids. What separates? Experience. The type of experience matters. And it goes to the prior question of working with the legislature and divided government. We've had a tough run with Governor LePage. I've got experience of working with people that don't always agree with me to get results. David Burns with Affordable Senior Housing Fund, never shut down state government with Mike Thibodeau, make sure we fought for more funding for our public schools. There's so much opportunity right in front of us. I think the next governor needs to be somebody that has experience and can walk in there day one. We've got 6 months to get it done, from January to June next year. You need somebody that doesn't need a training manual, that can walk into that office and get it done. For 8 years, that's what I did. I hope that I can earn your support. My name is Mark Eves, candidate for governor. Thank you.
Separate me, but I would say, first of all, we all have the same vision of Maine, I think. We all have the same goals, the same democratic, capital D, values. And I think what separates me is a couple of things. One is I am the most qualified person for the job. I'll say that right out there. Secondly, I'm not going to stand here and say things just because I think you want to hear them. I'm not going to pander to anybody. I'm going to tell you what I want to do and how I can do it, and we'll get it done together. Thirdly, I've got Emily's list endorsement. That means a lot to me. It should mean something to you about my record on public safety, my record on women's rights, my consistent record in that respect. And I've been Attorney General, sometimes feeling like a lone voice in the wilderness. The last line of defense for Maine people. I've stood up to LePage over and over again. I've stood up to Trump over and over again. I'll stand up to Trump as your governor. And finally, I met and married my husband some years ago when I was district attorney. He was a widower with 5 daughters. They were ages 4 to 16. I brought up 4 stepdaughters in this state. They're now my best friends. But I brought up 5 stepdaughters in this state. If I can do that, I can run state government.
Thank you. I thought 2 were enough, daughters, that is. 5, I probably wouldn't be here speaking to you today. I've spent 40 years in public service at the city, county, and state level. 32 years out on the road, meeting people in their homes, on the street, seeing how policy plays out in the real world. I'm running for governor for everyone who isn't here today, for those who have to work and they're not paid enough, those who have challenges that nobody recognizes, those who are home isolated by illness and age, who wish they could be here and wonder if anybody cares. That's who I'm running for as governor. Some say baggage in Augusta. That's not baggage. I see it as a resume of positions that I've taken and that my fellow colleague Democrats have taken on many issues. I'm proud of my votes. I'm proud of my fellow Democrats. That's not baggage. That lets the other side know exactly where we stand. And that's what this party needs to do again. Know where it stands and take the fight. So that's not baggage. That's a challenge to change. And we intend to bring it as Democrats. And as your governor, I want to lead that charge. I think it's important. I want to walk up the stairs to the Republican caucuses and advise them there's a new sheriff in town.
So, when I think of what I bring to the table that's different, it's twofold. One, I am working class. Imagine having a working class governor who represents working class Mainers, which is largely people in this state. 2, I am a visionary, a movement builder, someone that takes the big picture issue and charts a course to get us there. We need big ideas. We have been told that this is the goalpost by which we're allowed to actually talk about policy.
I want to break those open. We need Medicare for all. It is the top priority, I think, for most of us here. We also need a new deal, an economic security bill of rights, right? We need to make sure that we have a good job with fair wages, to organize for work, to have a public option retirement system to supplement Social Security. I have tackled the biggest issues in this state, some of the most transformational issues, including making sure that you don't have to vote for one of us, you can vote for all of us. We would not have that had I not led that fight. And that's the kind of leadership we need, and may the best bullet win.
How do I follow that? Right. Well, look, seven very qualified people. When I got into this race, I was the first one out of this group. So that sometimes is the hardest part for me to answer, because I knew and I felt very led in the direction to do this. But I will say that I believe I bring the broadest leadership experience to this field, from the local government sector to statewide boards. I've also helped write energy laws in other countries as a contract attorney for USAID. So I have certainly some government experience, but the leadership experience in the business side, in the legal side, on the military side, I would put up against anybody running for office right now. And the reality is the most important thing for us is that we got to win in November. We absolutely have to win this. Demonstrate anything in our campaign, it's the ability to unite, energize, and excite all bases of the Democratic Party. We received the endorsement of the Bangor Daily News a couple days ago, the Maine Common Good Coalition this morning. We're exciting and energizing a broad collection of people. I'm convinced we're going to see a really good turnout in this race. I'll support anybody that wins, but I'll tell you what, I think I have the best chance of winning, and I'd be honored to have your support. Thank you.
Hopefully very informative to everybody. The first thing that someone asked me when I started in January, they said, give me one word for your platform. I thought a minute, said respect. If we bring respect back to Augusta, we can talk about issues and not talk about political tags or name calling, and we can move things forward. Now I have a very diverse background. I worked for Time Warner for 12 years, and I went into different parts of the state, different states throughout the United States, and had to help them troubleshoot. Total strangers. They didn't want me. A Mainer, boy, do they have anything up there, and they're coming to Shreveport, Louisiana, they're going to help us. I was able to bring those people together. I helped UNE expand their campus so they could grow. I put an economic development package. I handled the school committee and the city. Benefit is the 6th largest, and that is a full-time job. I have the most diverse experience on the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and the municipal sector, I guess. Politically, I am not a politician. I'm a person who wants to address the needs. Remember me this way. Paperwork outside. Please collect it.
All the people running for local office. Please stand and take the call.
Okay. Oh, and please hold your applause until the end. Thank you. Dave Miramont, running for re-election for the Maine State Senate from Knox County, District 12, including all of Knox County except Washington.
And Penny B.B. Center running for re-election as state representative from District 93, representing Rockland Hills Head.
Vicky Dudera, running for state representative in District 94, representing Camden, Rockport, and Islesboro.
And Matt Lack, running for state representative in District 92, representing Thomaston, South Thomaston, Cushing, St. George, and Matinicus.
William Bill Pluker, independent, running for House District 95, representing Warren, Hope, Appleton, and Union.
Jeff Evangelos, independent, running for House District 91 representing Friendship, Waldeboro, Washington, and West Union.
Natasha Irving, running for District Attorney from District 6, which includes Knox, Waldo, Lincoln, and Saginaw counties.
Laura Forbin, Democrat, running for State Senate District 13, which includes Knox County, Washington. Laura was unable to be with us due to a death in her family. She's represented here by Field Director Brianna Pinkin.
Tim Carroll, running for Sheriff of Knox County.
And Dorothy Mayweather was running unopposed for County Commissioner.
We're inviting all the candidates to stay and join us for conversation and free refreshments. So please join us for some pizza. Stay in your lane and make your way to the cafe.